Hello and welcome to the Game Dev London podcast, a community of amazing people who love talking about and sharing their love for the details behind making games, whether or not they're actually based in London. I'm your host, I'm Oscar Clark, he, him pronouns, and I am on a quest to understand everything you want to know about game dev, but never dared to ask. And today I am delighted to be joined by Jack Harker. Just give me 2 seconds as I press the right button. And Jack, nice to see you.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yes, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and particularly, I know you're involved with an education side of things, but also Game Talent Wales. So tell us all about that.
Brilliant. Thank you. So, I've got a few hats that I wear, and depending on the time of year, exactly. My main job, my sort of original job, I guess, where a lot of this stems from, is I'm a lecturer in computing, specifically in games, in Wrexham Glyndŵr University in North Wales. But I also have a few other roles. One of them is being the community manager for Games Talent Wales, which is the official indie Games Talent program for Wales, which is great. And also, it's the time of year that's nearing the Global Game Jam. And I've also this
Oh,
year,
yes.
yes, it's my first year. I'm a regional organizer for that now. So that's been a lot of the things that I've been working on the last sort of month or so, making sure that we're heading towards getting everything sorted for the jam, which is coming up at the end of this month. Well, start of next month.
It is. I think it kicks off on the 3rd. I'm particularly aware because I know the Game Dev London team are doing some work with Global Game Jam, but also I've been very delighted that I've been asked by the Ukrainian Global Game Jam team to be a judge. So
Excellent.
Alexei there, who's a good friend of mine, in between air raids and various other terrible things that are going on with him and his family, has kindly asked me to help do some reviewing of the game. So I can't wait to be helping out with that. So let's kick off. So you come at this from the games industry from a kind of a coder educational perspective, but you're also sat there as a community manager, particularly. We know about community managers, particularly for the point of view of running games and managing gaming communities. But obviously, we have a Discord for Fundamentally Games. There's a Discord for Game Dev London. Tell us a little bit about how you manage the kind of Welsh game team communities.
Yeah, so it works a little bit differently, and I think that I was reminded yet again of the kind of positions that we're in Wales when so UK have done their updated game dev map, haven't they, across the UK?
Yes.
And if you have a look at Wales, there's not as much there as some other parts of the country, but as we know, in the UK, there's hubs all around. We're in north east Wales, so we're not far from kind of Liverpool and Manchester and that kind of hub. So a lot of the people that we know, they tend to gravitate in that kind of direction. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build more and retain more of our Welsh talent in Wales and build more of a hub there, because obviously these hubs, they grow, don't they? So build more of a hub in North Wales. Obviously there's a bit more down in the South Wales region towards like Swansea and Cardiff. But elsewise, if you have a look at it, there's not a lot there. So a lot of the community management really is making sure that if there's a community that's slightly smaller than some of the other communities, making sure everyone knows each other, we've got the right details, we can work together and collaborate, and people know specifically, what opportunities are available to them, because especially some of our younger game devs, they don't really know what options they have, and where to go, and that's a lot of the work that I do. I tend to work with quite not necessarily younger indie devs, but indie devs that are earlier on in their journeys. Really, this is when they start learning, when they literally, sometimes they turn up and I meet them for the first time. They know they want to do something in the games industry, but they don't really know how it works, what the options are. They haven't got any, kind of idea of where to start. So a lot of the work that I do, and I enjoy it a lot. I work with some of these devs a bit younger, so it's basically this kind of progression of growing this kind of talent, and then making sure that once they get to the stage where they've got skills behind them and they've got some time and passion to put in, do they have a platform that they can use to do something with it and go somewhere. And sometimes it's, or quite often it's not a, here's some money, here's your success kind of thing. And sometimes it's about growing that. And that's kind of what Games Planet Wales is about. It's about embracing that and trying to grow a lot of the some of the smaller devs, some of the devs that have been around for a couple of years now. They're still relatively new, but they've been working. But that's what it's all about, really, is managing that community and taking it in a positive direction.
Yeah, and there are teams around the UK in general, but in particular, I'm thinking about some teams in England and obviously places like Dundee, Falmouth. Leamington's got a rich community.
Absolutely.
I'm not too sure that I can't remember the most recent situation in terms of the different hub communities, because I know that's changed a lot over the pandemic era. In particular, I'm a bit out of touch, but there are communities out there that are tightly. Do you think there's something specific about being kind of a Welsh-based team that kind of gives you a different flavor of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that again, Games Planet Wales itself is funded through the Welsh government, and so there's similarities to other parts of the government that do funding like this. But the way that we see things is very different. And for example, things like the Welsh culture and the Welsh language is a huge kind of talking point and growth area for us. So we're looking at because we're setting up our sort of cycle for this next year very, very soon. So that's why one of the reasons I'm so keen to talk about it. But we're looking at seeing how we can expand that. So even if it's as simple as adding some, Welsh voice acting or maybe some language options, that's something that we're really sort of keen and passionate to do.
So when you say Welsh voice acting, are you talking about putting more Welsh voice talent in games, whatever the language? Or are you specifically talking about kind of more opportunities to feature the Welsh language itself?
Yeah, so I would say both. It's not we're not looking at making games that are only available in Welsh that's not accessible to everyone. We're trying to
what do you mean? Surely that's easy.
We're trying to enhance the accessibility really by having just think about representation and things like that. So people can see their cultures represented in their kind of the games they like to play, and whether it's just as simple as doing things like just having the menu. The menu system in there, because they're relatively small games anyway. They don't have a lot of things like voice acting and a lot of heavy in-depth stories and stuff like that. It's just having the options there to see if we can represent more people, especially in our corner of the world.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think that's it's understanding kind of the roots of opportunity that having a game accelerator in an area provide. I'm particularly interested because of the path between education and a game accelerator, because there's something about the passion of games that is inspiring. It happens to use a lot of different techniques. It's got coders, it's got artists, it's got writers, it's got audio, it's got every sensory kind of input, and it also provides an opportunity to apply technology to that in smart and interesting ways. Whether that's about controllers, whether it's about machine learning, there's even just use of internet connectivity. There's so many different possibilities. The possibilities that then leads on to that's slightly beyond that. I mean, I don't want to go down the NFT, not NFT debate, because that's for other people to hold.
Yeah.
But just the idea of other technologies, for example, thinking about the use of spatial computing. And what does that mean for interfaces moving forward? The application of game motivation to apply to other industries to make it easier for you to understand the choices and options that they have available to them. And there's so many kind of aspects that has a knock-on effect, and the talent pool that is generated through, in my opinion, through building up of game skills, I think is of significant consequence. Not to mention the fact that it's a significant, it is the largest revenue element of the digital economy, digital entertainment economy, I should say. So, I mean, is this how? I mean, I've said a lot there, but is that kind of reflective of the way that the organisations you work with understand it, or are they looking at some more specific elements? Are they looking for specific areas of what motivates them to be.
No, I think probably the first thing you said, where it's a collaboration. It's a bit of a melting pot of different people and with different skill sets, and I know that that's something that we try to very much embrace with our the courses that we run, at least, because we specifically have a few routes where actually it's designed for people from all aspects and all kind of skills and backgrounds and to work together. I know a lot of places do this, but you've got things like we have our art courses and our coding courses together. So there's lots of crossover, so that we kind of as we create stuff, we do things like you said, where it's there's that cross collaboration and cross pollination with different aspects of different parts of the process, whether that's specifically game design, game tech, or tech maybe that's a bit outside of game design, for example.
Yeah.
And that's always good, right? Because that's like introducing new things into the process, and that's where you get new stuff out. Because if you're looking at the same things all the time, then it's just going to be, a bit of a reimagining of old things. If you're not putting anything new, you're not getting anything out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it reminds me, a friend of mine. So we did some work with the Pocket Gamer team, and there's a friend of ours who runs an accelerator in Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all part of the King's kind of financial kind of. There's an area inside Amman where they have a building and they have various facilities and stuff like that. And the way that they talk about it is really clean, because it's saying, look, this is an industry which is about education. It's about applying that into entertainment. It's something that's accessible to people with very, very small amounts of capital infrastructure.
Yeah,
it's something where they have a remarkable, for a Middle Eastern country, the proportion of women participating in that process is dramatic, because it is a role function that doesn't create conflicts in the same way that we have seen in other territories. So I'm not going to get into whys and wherefores of various cultural differences at all. I mean, I think the way that Jordan, I was so impressed by that Jordan and the team that they worked with out there. The thing in my head, though, is that the key economic principles that they're applying make sense. You create an incentive for a lot of people to want to participate in making games. You, by default, create interest and support and resources that makes it possible to train people for computing, for culture, for arts in one foul swoop. You create a revenue model, but based on that drives that, creates a positive loop for the economy. And again, reminding us that comparatively, the capital investment, the PCs, the internet connections, are relatively small compared to, say, heavy industry.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting how there have been a bunch of people. In fact, I even talked to the local council here in sunny Aldershot, who were looking into that. In the end, the Games Hub didn't happen. Pandemic combined with different priorities, but it's interesting that they did capture their imagination at some point. So I think there's definitely something in this. So one thing that always struck me, though, is for that kind of community to really flourish, I think it's not just about build it and they will come.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to kind of build something in it. I think you've got to build some inherent value. Where is the value proposition? Is it kind of education leading you with talent to a place where there are people who are making stuff, or is it about the fact that you've got community of people who can share knowledge? Or is there some other sort of economy of scale of the pool of people? And what are things that really motivate that?
I think that where it starts is in education, right? That's usually where we start. We've got plans to roll out the process a little bit wider this year and larger than how we've done it before. But in previously, it's been like a collaborative effort between us in Wrexham Glyndŵr and the University of South Wales. And the idea is that it is an accelerator program for students on undergraduate degrees who are near that finishing point, although there is some flexibility there, and we've had some quite younger devs do it. We had some first year students do it last year, which was good fun. But that's kind of where it starts in this kind of, education. But it's not just that. That's kind of what they start with. The process is all about, again, it's like I said, it's growing that talent, and obviously money is involved. And so, so indie studios have the opportunity to have a bit of a step up, a startup, kind of some funding available to them so they can start to do things. But it's also about the mentorship they get throughout the process. So we tend to work with, it tends to be different every year, but we have like a pool of mentors, industry mentors that help and support, these devs as they go in through their process, and they've got their products and projects and got ideas, and they've got a little bit of industry mentorship. And then the output really for us is to come down to London basically, and that's EGX is basically the end point of the process. It kind of starts in sort of February, ends in that kind of September time, where we really get to be there, on the show floor with a big banner with a Welsh dragon on it. So if you've been to the last year, we were there, and if you went in 2019, we were there with a big banner saying, this is what Wales has to offer, and it's about kind of not just doing it at home where we are, and doing some stuff there. It's about bringing it to other parts of the
literally
country.
Flying a flag.
Yeah, well, pretty much is what it is. And I know that some of our guys, some of our alumni have gone to GDC as well. And they've gone on to go further than London and go in a few other places. So,
well, it's also Gamescom. I know that
yes.
I'm not sure how connected you are with Wales Interactive team, but obviously we see them everywhere.
Yes. They were Games Talent Wales. It was the Evil Owl Studios, actually. They went out to GDC a few years ago, and they went with Wales Interactive. They were our mentors the first time round. We ran it in 2019. So we went down and had a chat with them, and they worked with some.
Let's talk a bit about that. So, I mean, I think, again, just to explore this kind of what is the value of these kind of groups. So I think, you've talked a little about mentoring. I think having a kind of educational track, having a pool of people, having a flag to wave that can attract attention, so that people who are wanting to invest in those areas, who want to get advantage of the kind of the tax breaks of investing in that space. I'm assuming there are some tax breaks, at least I hope there are. Then it gives people a sense of confidence. Okay, if I'm going to go look at a team in Wales, then I can know that they're amongst a bunch of people. I can recognise. I know those people, therefore I can judge that they're going to be heading in the right direction. But it is a tough one, isn't it? Because I think we are lucky in games because we're not as London centric as many industries. There's a lot of teams in London, sure. Leamington is quite major. I mean, I'm in Guildford, which used to be the number one place in the UK, but arguably between us and Dundee. I think in terms of volume of titles, I think we're still there, but that's because EA and Co are based here. So it's an interesting one because I mean, obviously, I used to work in London studio for Sony, so there is a significant proportion of teams that are not London, but also a significant proportion that are. Do you think that Wales is well represented within the context of that, or I mean, you hinted at it not necessarily being very abundantly clear on the UK map. Is that a reflection of us not telling people that we exist, or that
no,
you guys exist? Or
I think it's a combination of things, and I think that's kind of where Games Talent Wales comes in, and where it's got room to grow. Really, is to number one, bring all the people that are already there that maybe they don't know each other exist, and they don't know how to make a big fuss and say we're here, we're doing stuff, and really understand what is in Wales and how that worked, and then to grow it further. I would say so. It's a bit of both, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, I mean, how do you track it? Do you pay attention to the number of teams, the performance, the revenues of those teams? Do you do any tracking in that context?
Yes, we do some. I mean, the process itself, although we've been going for a couple of years, we did take a bit of a hiatus through COVID, through the pandemic. So we're really looking at starting our third year of of funding, third round of funding again. It's going to be bigger again this year. So
Yeah.
we're not quite in the stage where we can look at what we've done and gone, right, okay, we're starting to see, you know, the improvement in performance, you know, and things like that you're talking about. But one of the key things that we do sort of focus on, and it's less of a, here you guys have some funding, off you go, you know, good luck. It's more of a community type of process where actually we keep track of people and we build up a network of indie studios, and you know, potentially they can return with us for further funding maybe down the road, and maybe that's just a small amount because they've got funding from elsewhere, or it might be that you know, it hasn't worked out the first time and maybe they've got a new project, and again it's about how can we look at improvement via these people. That's really the main thing that we're looking at. How can we grow these devs? So, you know, maybe they're not going to, you know, earn X amount of money in between this year and next year, but maybe, you know, this money is growing these people into a larger studio, or maybe a more confident studio, or a studio that, you know, might not get it this time, but maybe next time, you know, or the time after. And, you know, it's about that. That's kind of our mindset on it. And the idea is that every year we'll have like a spectrum of different teams at varying levels in their process. Most of them, again, are relatively early on. Some of them are like, you know, really, really early on in their first ideas, first forming, thinking about what they want to do. And it's about giving them the opportunities to really explore what their opportunities are. Because that's the thing that I think that we suffer from is because, you know, some of these, you know, some of the larger events and some of the other things they do and types of funding, they're not around the corner, right? So it's about giving people the confidence to look for their own kind of opportunities and say, you know, this is what you could do. And again, long term, hopefully we will grow into a bit of a hub, and then things will be a little easier and we won't have to make, you know, such big trips to London to showcase these kind of things. But I think it's all heading in the right direction. We're putting a lot of sort of time and effort into it.
So, I mean, I'm just trying to think in terms of, so when you're choosing which teams you're going to support, it sounds like you're looking at a range of different criteria. Is it, what are the kind of driving factors? I mean, do you have a kind of formula? Are you looking at each team and its merits? Are you looking at the impact that I'm not sure what your financial levels you're talking about in terms of investment are, but are we talking about tiny amounts of money? Are we talking about giving people, like, because I'll tell you where I'm coming from is, I think in the UK and Germany, in fact, you know, most of Europe probably, there are a few exceptions. We don't really have this kind of prototyping funding. There's a small amount, like 25k here, 25k there, but 25k is not a lot of money to get a game started.
No.
Now, and also, if there's only like a few, you know, half dozen whatever grants of that level, I mean, I'm exaggerating. Apologies for the people who run those things. I'm not trying to go at you guys at all, but I'm just trying to emphasize for the point of the effect, which is we are talking about relatively small amounts. It's not like we can go, you know, I think it's the Techis in Finland, where we can basically, as long as we've got a relatively sensible kind of proposition, and you know, we're not, you know, we're not stupid, and we pitch it, there's a reasonable amount of money that we could just go get. You know, Techis is amazing for that sort of thing, as I understand it. We can't get that kind of level of money in games. Now, there is obviously the SCIS and EIS scheme, but that's a little bit further down the line. And my view is that a lot of the people who invest in that scale of things, although they're getting a lot of tax benefits for doing so, will tend to have more of a risk-averse kind of, like, they expect the kind of like 5x, 10x kind of returns that you would expect from a traditional investment. No, don't get me wrong. I'm again not trying to cast aspersions on anyone. Just, I think there's a gap there between these two.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we've got these relatively small grants and these reasonable, even though with SCIS we're still talking about 150k, so we're not talking about huge amounts of money to make a game. You know, a game nowadays, I mean, you're going to be spending 300k, 500k at a minimum.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, how do we square that corner? I mean,
Well, yeah, it's a big question, that, isn't it? I mean, yeah,
Mm.
we're dealing with, frankly, micro grants with quite
Yeah.
small amounts of money, and yeah, it's not something that's going to get, an acorn into a tree, right? It's not something that's like that. So when we're dealing with, the people who start with us, usually there's something fairly fundamental there, and that's where it works quite well if you link it into business acceleration within the context of an education environment, right? Because, for example, a lot of our students, they might be spending, a good 6 to 9 months making a game during, their final year of studies. So it makes sense to utilize that to its full potential, because you can't, funding for that kind of development between, even if it's only 3 and 4 people is significant, right? So it's about taking what we already have and extending it, but more specifically, it's for Games Talent Wales. Obviously, the money comes into it, but it's about that mentorship and links to industry, but specifically getting to London and being there at the right place at the right time, which is obviously quite hard to do. But you don't know. You're definitely not going to be there if you're not there, right? So it's
No,
about,
exactly. Yeah.
getting there and talking to people and taking that those opportunities when you can, because again,
Yeah.
people in North Wales, it's difficult to do that because obviously it costs money to get there, costs money to get hotels and all these kind of things, right? It's not as simple as just doing that, especially if you're a new starter, especially if you're not long out of education and you want to make something for yourself.
Yeah,
And even if
exactly.
some of these guys, they
It's
want.
interesting because I'm thinking about Northern Ireland Screen
Mhm.
and the guys there that have been around for a while with the Pixel Mill and stuff like that. And it's not quite the same, but there are teams in that cluster, in that area, that have done a really good job of leveraging every single possible grant and opportunity.
Mhm.
And I think it just show. I mean, the reason I mentioned that cluster is just because I happen to know a particular guy who's a friend of
Yeah.
mine who is really good at it. And I'm thinking about them particularly because, and I don't want to name names anyway, but I'm particularly thinking about them because what they show is that it's possible. But there is a kind of downside, which is there's a lot of paperwork involved when you're dealing
Yes.
with grants.
Yes.
And what it does empower to an extent is this kind of joyful, um, spontaneous creativity to do cool new things.
Mhm.
And I think we want that, we need that. We don't really have a kind of patronage model like you do in other art forms. We don't really have the short film stuff that you might have in a film industry context. I think there is the opportunity for people to cut their teeth. This is the reason where I'm going on this, by the way. Hopefully this makes sense. The reason I think it's important is getting that early stuff, the failures, the kind of stupid, ridiculous, outrageous, insane, beautiful monstrosities are the things that we need to do to see the next amazing blockbuster.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's why I love the idea of these clusters, is because it provides that space where you can get a group of people in a room talking to each other, spinning off each other. And if there is money on the table, maybe one or two of those ideas. And then again, you come back to the Global Game Jam. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think the idea of groups like the Games Talent Wales, and the ones in Falmouth and Belfast and various other places. Sorry, not Belfast, Dublin. There, I think there's one in Belfast as well. Too many places, too many people.
Yeah.
But the reason why I think that's really interesting is because when you get groups of people talking about game development, ideas flow.
Mm-hmm.
If there's money in the bank to make those real, we see transformation in that environment in ways that you would previously have talked about for filmmaking. You previously would have talked about for artistry. And I don't know if we appreciate that low level talent enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we like, for example, let's last time we took 8 teams to EGX, right? And hopefully next time we're looking at sort of maybe 12 or more or whatever. But yeah, we're not going to be mad if all 8 don't come back with publishing deals.
No.
It's about some of them. Some stuff's going to work, some stuff's not going to work. But again, it's about the investing in the people and the devs
Yeah.
that we have in Wales, and if they turn up and they've got it all wrong, and obviously we'll try and, you know, make it so they probably won't find out on the show floor that they've got it all wrong. Hopefully we can work towards before that. But if it turns out that it doesn't quite work out, and, you know, they have lots of feedback and it's not great feedback, that's not a failure, is it? In the sense that
it's
all over, that's not their one go at it. That's not what we're all about. We're about growing that. And
if you've got one idea, there's a problem.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And the idea of having a bit of a spectrum of different people on different stages in their development is, again, it's like collaboration, right? It might be that, you know, one year we'll have 2 separate teams, and the next year, you know, or a year after, they might become one team, and, you know, the people will network.
Well,
and
that's it. You know, we all know. I mean, I particularly think about Finland because the interesting thing, a number of teams that fell out of Nokia. So Nokia, massive talent, and obviously when mobile Java games came about, where was the natural place for the amazing teams who understood what mobile could do? It was Finland. So, you know, when you see teams like when it was, I think it was Sumia, which was then became it was sold to Digital Chocolate, and then Chocolate, Ilkka left there. So Ilkka Pananen, who set up Sumia, well, one of the people involved in Sumia, Digital Chocolate, and then now Supercell. You can see this trajectory of, you know, what was once these kind of teams that were kind of pushing and innovating in a platform that was brand new and, you know, stupid and crazy. And then suddenly he's one of the biggest teams on the planet. And it's not just the team he created. Then later on, people like, the team that formed Seriously, Phil and Andrew Stalbo and all those guys. I mean, there's a whole bunch of folks. I'm going to fail to mention them all because I know most of them. But it's like the fact that they came out of this like amazing culture and then created Seriously and then sold that on. And but that's not just them. It's like there's the Nokia. So there's the Rovio folks. There are people who were in a company called Mr. Good Living back in the day. There's a whole bunch of communities. And what's really fascinating to me, and the reason why I use Finland as an example, is because if anyone sat down and did a family tree of all of the teams, that all of the mobile developers that once worked in that city used to work with, it's amazingly incestuous. And I think that idea of culture connection and engagement, that sharing of knowledge, that openness, that willingness to share and communicate, realize that we're not competing with each other. We're all making games. Our games are different, but we're competing with entertainment. I think that's really powerful. I mean, do you see this kind of like all ships raise with the tide kind of thing going on with this community?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It is tough because you know, the games industry is hard to get into, right? It's not like you walk into it and it's, you know, you got to put the time and effort and motivation. You have to have all that. So this idea, I think most of our younger devs that we have, they're heading towards this, you know, the point where they feel like they are competing. And, you know, one thing is better than another thing. And, you know, some people do certain processes where you got to win and all this kind of thing. And that's kind of why we're trying to do something a little bit different. So we can go, right, okay, well, what have you got? How can we get it funded? You know, obviously with Games Like Wales, that's good. That's like a first step, but we can help. We can maybe get you funded by other people. So, you know, we've had some of our alumni students being funded by Epic, for example, you know, and that might be a significantly bigger step than what maybe we can offer, but we can give them a platform to get there and to get to EGX and have those kind of conversations with people and, you know, not just EGX, but just be a bit more, you know, aware of their opportunities. Again, it's about the awareness of opportunities, really, because where we are and the kind of, you know, the talent that we produce, they're not always aware of what they can do. So it's about sort of supporting that and making sure they make the best of what they have, really.
I mean, let's go a bit further into that, because I'm thinking about this. You know, I mean, in the part of Wales you're in, you know, are we talking about massive other opportunities, or are the opportunities, you know, more limited? I mean, I'm talking about not just commercial opportunities, but, you know, career opportunities, expression opportunities. again, I'm sitting here in, a classic British English guy in a top hat being very patronizing. I don't mean it in that way. Hopefully you understand.
Yeah, no.
But, oh no, I'm sitting here in, like I say, sunny Aldershot. We're home of the army. We are not the best culturally balanced environment. Although it's interesting how we do have an amazing community of people from Nepal, but we're also part of this amazing cluster, which is responsible for so much game development in the UK because we're so well connected with Guildford. So even in a little place like this, we may be proximate to London, but there are some discrete differences in terms of the way people have opportunities. And honestly, I feel like there's a real missing opportunity here to feed off the fact that we've got Guildford, we've got things like ACM, the kind of there's a FE level games education. We've got Surrey University. You've got Surrey University pushing a whole bunch of commercial arrangements. There's a whole bunch of infrastructure right here.
Yeah.
And the proximity and advantage of being close to London. And I'm very aware of that privilege.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I actually quite like. I'm not a homegrown Wrexhamer. I like to think I'm an adopted Wrexhamer, and I've stayed. I'm not going anywhere basically. But we in Wrexham we're okay because we're in the kind of middle zone because we are in Wales and
which is lovely.
Yeah, exactly. It's snowing, by the way, where we are.
I've got no snow. I've just got that -7.
But we are quite close to Liverpool. I mean, we're about an hour and a half from Liverpool, something like that. Same for Manchester. So a lot.
And there is a great games hub in Liverpool.
Exactly. So lots of our best devs, they head off in that direction, and that's fine, right? That's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But then if we look the other way towards towards the north coast for Bangor and Sears, there are some sort of smaller hubs again. There are some opportunities, but not a lot. There's no the larger teams and devs we have are almost based in like the South Wales. Really, that's what they have. And again, that's closer to the whole Bristol hub and all that kind of stuff. So there isn't an abundance of opportunities here. So one of the we're doing is like, well, let's create that. Let's do our best to create that. And it's not easy and it's not going to happen overnight. But it's a process we've started on.
But the opportunity you've got is that you've got the awareness of the Welsh government. You've got support. It may not be in massive numbers, but that's not the point. The point is about seeding talent and providing with the kind of infrastructure. And I think that the fact that you reached out to me to do this podcast is a great sign that the ability to connect us in that kind of central shared passion about making games is massive. Absolutely. And like I say in the intro, what we're interested in, I think all is that we're interested in the detail behind what it takes to make games and paying attention to that, communicating that, sharing that knowledge, and not being overly protective. I think that's a massively important thing. I think we don't talk enough about. Ideas are not these kind of gold standards. They are the starting point.
Exactly.
If you said in like a sentence what game you're going to make, and I tried to make the same game, they would both be completely different.
No, that's it. And I think that again, that's one of the things we're trying to foster is this kind of collaboration and cross-pollination between different people doing different things, even if one team's got a year's worth of experience more than the other, but the other team, that can be massive because we're talking about a lot of people are early on in their careers and they don't have a lot of experience with going to, it might be that come to EGX through Games Talent Wales, that's the first time they've been, and it might be the first time they've been to a games convention of that size because there's not loads of them in the UK, is there? EGX is the biggest one, but so it's about giving them the opportunities and then hoping at that point they take them to the fullest extent, when they go, right, I'm off with my business cards, I'm going to do some networking, and it's about building that, and that's kind of where we are. But I'm
still a fan of the business card.
Nothing wrong with that. But I'm proud of the fact that again the 2 times we've done it already, we've been on that big big Welsh dragon banner, and we said, "This is we're here. This is what we're doing. This is what we've got this year." And I'm looking very much forward to being there this year. Hopefully, again with a slightly larger, potentially having more stuff to show.
So I think we talked a lot about the main point of what we were going to talk about, Game Talent Wales, and the opportunities that connecting together, and obviously the funding, but also the opportunity to be seen as part of a growing talent base. I think is really important, particularly as you get to things like EGX, and maybe we'll get you along to Pocket Gamer or something. Get you guys onto the Yuki stand maybe. So there's a whole bunch of opportunities to get people out there and talking. But let's talk a little bit about kind of like getting the talent skill sets together. So obviously the other part of what you do is helping people understand the coding side of things. I'd be interested to know kind of, in the context of that, what is the sort of thing that you think is most needed right now in terms of helping teams that you're working with who are trying to make games better get prepared for that process? I mean, are you seeing a connection between the work you're doing in education paying off and driving more talent into the space, or is it the other way around where the people who want to make games need that training and they're looking to find other ways to get that training rather than the formal education process?
Yeah, it's a good question. That is a very good question. I think that it's about there's a bunch of things that we will teach our students, and there's things that lots of other places will do the same. But there's lots of things that we don't always teach that they need, right? And so, for example, this idea of let's get them into EGX and hopefully they'll make the best of their opportunities. About not just making an amazing game, right? Because let's just assume that you've done that. Okay, you've got to do something with it, and you've got to understand the context of how that exists. It's not like you said earlier. If you build it, they will come. That's not really how it works, is it? You got to do something with it. So we've got this. We're sort of we're expanding this and doing our best with this, but to sort of include a lot of the enterprise work and the real understanding of the context of what people are doing in around making games. So with us, what we're trying to do in this recent years is kind of split down streams of different, because you can't teach everything, right? Students, we can't teach them everything. We want to. We really, really want.
Surely you can. Come on.
But we can't. In 3 years, sounds like a lot. It's not, because the amount of time it takes for people to grow into doing the kind of things they want to do. And
I think you've hit on something there I'm really interested by.
Yeah.
I mean, because you just so to my mind, I mean, maybe because I don't technically have a degree. I have a postgrad, but I don't have a degree. I did the HND, I did business and finance, I did marketing. I'm a trained marketeer as opposed to a coder.
Yeah.
But I always got the impression that a sort of degree level, particularly, was more about teaching you how to learn than it was about getting you to be upskilled. Whereas the more vocational type courses, a bit like what I was trying to do, was more about teaching you bits about how the job should work, if that makes sense. Am I being...
No, I mean that's a really good way of seeing it. And I think lots of degrees it's more about if you get through it and you get on the other side, you probably do have the confidence and self-efficacy to go, I can take this on. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And that in itself is a difficult thing to teach, because we've got to teach that through the lens of game dev and all the kind of stuff and skills we've got to do. And it is a challenge. It is a challenge to do that and get that balance right and get people not. The other thing is like we have to say, okay, I know that you're really focused on what I've just told you and what I've asked you to do, but don't forget to do all the other stuff, like come on,
you're going to tell me to read around the subject.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's that the whole culture of that doesn't work the same in a lot of sort of maybe some of the newer subjects. I might be wrong, but I think that the reading around the subject is for us is being engaged with what's going on right now And I know we have a lot of students who, you know, they're a bit more introverted, right? And they don't necessarily want to go to
coders
things.
being introverted on
Well, I
average?
wasn't going to
Surely
say
not.
anything. But yeah, getting that kind of idea of you know, you have to go to this event. You know, like I this week, one of my main focuses is we're running an on-campus event on the next month, and I'm getting a bunch of talkers in, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to have to give them the hard sell to get them to turn up to this event, you know, which is on campus. Because you know, again, it's about opportunities and really understanding what opportunities you have and when to take them, and it's okay. Like Game Jam, talk about Game Jam, for example. A lot of my students that I have, and I like to focus on students on foundation year and first year, so they come to me with, you know, not a lot of skills or not very confident, and I want them to get them involved with Game Jam, because that's a perfect way of getting, you know, experience and understanding the creativity involved and just being there. They don't have to do anything; they just have to be there. But the natural answer to that is, I don't know enough yet, you know. And it's kind of breaking down the walls of that mentality. Is it? No, you do. You know, you don't even have. It's not about what you bring in; it's about what you're leaving with. You know, and it's that kind of mentality, and it's very difficult to grow that, and it takes a lot of time. And so
it does. I mean, the thing you've got me thinking about here is that one of the things I'm often asked is, what advice would you give to people? And the key one for me is just make games. And now that is such a cliche. It happens to be true, probably why it's cliche, but it's also difficult to get across to people what that means, because I think what we want to be doing is actually learning the craft. And the craft involves understanding the syntax, sure, because if you can't understand the syntax, you can't do the coding. But it's also understanding the shapes. And to me, what I mean by shapes is, you know, unless I know 1,500 mechanics, how they're applied in board games and computer games, in how I do them on a whiteboard to describe what someone does, how I think about a thumb moving on a screen would operate. Unless I think instinctively about all of those elements, am I going to come up with the next best thing? And even if I do know all those things, am I going to come up with the next best thing if I don't also take into account what the player experience is going to be, what the art's going to be, what the experience is going to be? So to me, the whole point about the education, separate from the preparing your portfolio, is about the education getting me prepared, the portfolio building being about experimenting and taking on the Mythbusters mindset, namely failure is always an option, and the only difference between screwing around the science is writing things down. My two favorite phrases of all time, as I often quote on this podcast. Those two things are what making a game is about. Making a game, iterating, but then releasing. And I think this is the thing that is much easier to do if you're doing it in a community of people, because you can have someone who can help you say, oh, when I tried to finish that build, this was the problem I had adding that SDK. This was the problem I had putting it into the Google App Store. Yes, my app got rejected as well. It's okay. Just do these changes and it will be fine. Just change these wording. It will be fine. Oh, you have to pay $25 to Google to get an account, or whatever the number is. It's those things that you're not going to get in the YouTube video. That comes because you're in a community of people who also been on a journey with you, or, you know, they're on their own journey, but you then will know things that they don't know.
It gets difficult, to be honest, when some of students come through and they're at, you know, the later stages, or they're, you know, they're doing a postgraduate qualification with us, and you know, they're at that point now where, you know, I don't want to tell them what to do. I want them to do it themselves. You know, I want them to because they you know, might well do it better than me, and you got to be like, right, okay, you're on your own now. You're doing your own thing. I can help you and talk and give you some feedback based on this and this and this and this. But this is what you're doing now. This is something brand new, and you got to leave them to that.
Reminds me of my old colleague Hugh at Sony, who used to just say "ship it."
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that we have, and a lot of our students, they come in with ideas of perfectionism, and they want to do this, they want to do that, and it's like sometimes it's like, right, well, in the context of education, we don't just have a ship it, but we do have a submit it, just submit it, and this idea of, right, enough's enough now, on to the next thing. And like you were saying, a lot of our main sort of 3 years, it seems like a lot, but it's not. If you think about how many times they're going to make something and for it to be probably not what they wanted, right? That's only really 3 or 4 decent sized projects for them to really learn from, timescale wise, and you can't really shorten that process that much. You have to have that long process for them to really learn experientially based on their projects that they're doing and the things that they're exploring, and that kind of thing. You can't shorten that down. So there's 3 years, they don't go very far. And that's why we try and fit as much extracurricular things as possible and get them straight on things like Game Talent Wales or similar strategies for them to explore more, even if they don't want to be in the long term. It's about it's a good opportunity for them to really explore what they can do and get some experience by doing it, really.
And if anyone's wondering why we haven't explored the idea of what is indie, is because there are countless other podcasts that discuss that unanswerable debate.
Absolutely.
Indie is in the eye of the beholder. So thank you very much. I mean, tell us a little bit quickly as we wrap up what you're planning to do for Global Game Jam.
Oh, okay. Well, we've got a site in North Wales, so we need to make sure that is absolutely flagship site. So that is on my list of things to do. Obviously, we've had a real good number of sites across the UK this year. Hopefully, I think it's looking like it'll be a bit more than last year, which would be great. Really excited. The teaser's out now, so you can see the teaser, and obviously the theme will come soonish now, and we're not very far along. We're like 2 weeks away now or something. So
exactly. And to be honest, I don't know if this podcast is going to go up before or after. That's the only downside.
Sorry,
no, it's fine. It's the joys of temporality. Somebody may hear this before, absolutely. Somebody may hear this after. But the key thing is, there are fantastic events like Global Game Jam which really inspire people to go out and make things. And I think that's what I think for me at the end of the day is this is what it's about. Mm-hmm. We are a community of people who love making games, and loving playing games and loving making games are two different but related things. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we can communicate and challenge and engage with each other on that is massive. And having people like yourself sitting there helping people train to get the skills, the basic core mechanics, the components that make that possible, I think it's really important. And the fact that you're also supporting a game community that help more developers, particularly in an area in Wales where you can help people understand that is a perfectly legitimate place. Let's face it, games is the best place to have remote working, in my opinion. So and why not live somewhere nice? On that note, is there any kind of social media handle of choice that people should pay attention to?
Well, again, Game Talent Wales is setting up for the new year, the new cycle. So we're always looking for potential applicants and people who might want to be involved. So you can find us at Game Talent Wales on Twitter. It's probably the best place to find us, and send us a message if you want.
Great. So Game Talent Wales is all on Twitter. You'll see it all in the link. It's been popping up as we're going along.
Excellent.
Jack, thank you so much for reaching out to me. Great chatting to you. I'm hoping we'll see each other at EGX, if not beforehand, and catching up in person. Thank you very much. And this has been your Game Dev London podcast. I have been your host, Oscar Clark, and we have been talking about something I think is really important, which is how do game developers talk to each other, connect, share, and understand the best things about how to make better games more easily, more efficiently, more capably, more imaginatively, more delightfully. And if you believe in making better games, the only way we're going to do that is if we talk to each other, having connections with each other, having diverse groups of people, bringing ideas into a central point and experimenting is where it's going to happen. The fact that there are spaces where we can get revenue, we can get grants, we can get support, we can get investment, and also where we can just simply have a pool of talent who can talk to each other is amazingly important. So let's carry on this theme. If you've got any thoughts on how, what hubs there are out in the UK that people should be connecting to, like Games Talent Wales, or like Game Dev London, or Game Dev Lisbon, or all those other teams, the teams down in Bath, the teams down in Falmouth, the teams all over this country, all over the world. Let's talk. Let's keep going, and let's make amazing games. Thank you very much for taking part in this. If you enjoyed what we were talking about, please like, subscribe, and do the usual stuff. But equally, don't forget the Discord group, Game Dev London. Let's have a chat. Let's talk more about how we get more sharing of information between game developers. And thank you very much. This has been your Game Dev London podcast.